Now, I can't even begin to tell you how many times this has sort of happened to me where I'm fighting in a big room or maybe a big open space and I'm trying to get an enemy that might be running away, or maybe they're just staying their distance. So I go ahead and I do my two move actions. I have one action left in order to try to hit them with a ranged weapon, and they're outside the range. Does that mean I can't hit them? No, it actually doesn't. There are things called range increments and range penalties that go along with those increments that allow you to go beyond what the typical range of a weapon could be, but the penalty exists simply to account for that additional range. So I thought we'd go ahead and talk about this. And my name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. So the range penalty is there for when you want to go outside what the listed range increment is. You can kind of think of it this way. If you have a range increment of a thrown object that might be 20 feet or something along those lines, well, you're going to be pretty accurate within those 20 feet. However, once you go beyond those 20 feet, you're going to have to put a little bit more strength behind it. You might have to rotate more with the hips or whatever maybe your baseball coach told you what to do when you were in T-ball or something along those lines. You're going to be less accurate because you're trying to do more power, basically. And when you start getting further and further out, you're going to have to throw with more power at a different angle, at a higher angle, in order to try to reach that further target. So you're going to become more and more inaccurate than you would be if you could just stay within that first increment for which whatever it was designed, be it a crossbow or a short bow or a thrown weapon or maybe a bomb. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about these range penalties. So ranged and thrown weapons are going to have basically their main range increment, and it's going to be on the list, and we'll go ahead and kind of put that up here on the screen. So attacks with any particular ranged weapon, be it a ranged weapon or a thrown object, will grow less and less accurate against targets as they are further away. Now, once again, this is simply due to you trying to put more behind whatever you're trying to actually go against, or having to change the angle and having to deal with more wind and more resistances and other things that could happen in order to decrease your accuracy. Now, one thing that the listing does say is that it discusses it more in depth later in the book, in this particular case on page 426 of Player Core. However, it pretty much is just restating exactly this. So I'm not going to go too far into the second discussion of this simply because it's largely the same as the first. So basically, what this means is that as long as your target is at or within the listed range increment, which in this particular case is going to be maybe 120 for a crossbow, then that is going to be the first range increment, and you will take no penalties at all to the attack roll because the weapon is pretty much just doing what it was designed to do within the parameters of what it was designed to do it in. But if you are attacking beyond that range increment, you will take a -2 penalty for each additional increment beyond the first. Now, once again, all this can be explained simply because you're trying to make something that was designed to go a certain distance go further than it was, changing angles, trying to do it with more strength, but you're going to lose some of that fine control as you try to adjust these things. So you can attempt to attack with a ranged weapon or a thrown weapon up to a certain point, and that limit is 6 range increments away. And the farther away you get, that -2 just keeps stacking and makes it harder and harder for you to hit the target. So they do have an example in the book, and it's a pretty standard one, and this would be a crossbow. Crossbow has a range increment of 120 feet. So if you're shooting at a target that is less than 120 feet, no penalty, and it's going to be just an attack. Now, if they're beyond that 120 feet, but no more than 240 feet away, that's the second increment, and you will take a -2. And this kind of keeps on going and going. If they're beyond 240, but no more than 360 feet away, it'd be a -4 penalty due to the range, and you're going to be in the third increment, and it keeps going and going to basically the last increment, which would be beyond 600 feet, but no more than 720 feet away, where you would take a -10 penalty due to range. But you cannot go beyond that 6th increment. That would be the furthest that you can go. Now, this also applies to thrown weapons as well, and we'll go ahead and take an example of an alchemical bomb. Now, an alchemical bomb has a range increment of 20 feet. So, once again, if you're shooting or throwing at a target within that distance, you are going to take no penalty due to range. You're in your first increment. If they're beyond 20 feet, but no more than 40 feet, you would take a -2 penalty due to range. And it kind of goes along from there. Between 40 and 60 would be your third increment, which would be -4. 60 to 80 would be a -6. 80 to 100 feet would be a -8. And beyond 100 feet, but no more than 120 feet away, you are going to take a -10 penalty due to that range. You are simply going to be trying to throw as hard as you can, and you just might lose some of that fine motor control that keeps that accuracy there. And that is why you're going to take that -10 penalty due to range. Now, range penalty and range increment are pretty easy to understand kind of once you get why it's changing and how far out you can go. Remember, no more than 6 increments, and it's going to be a -2 each and every single time you do it. Now, I do hope you like this little quick tip on the range penalty and range increments. And if you did like this video, feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. But whatever you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.